He was a morbidly obese surgeon destined for an operating table and an early death. Now he's a rebel MD who is fabulously fit and fighting to make America healthy again. This is Stay Off My Operating Table with Dr. Philip Ovadia.
Well, welcome back, everybody. This is a Stay Off My Operating Table podcast with Dr. Philip Ovadia. I am your co-host, Jack Heald, and we've got a different kind of business that we're going to find out about today. I am really excited about this. Phil, you don't know this, but one of our best friends, one of DeLon and my best friends, owns a home for the elderly, and what I've seen about our guest, I want to be able to share with my friend Ray. So Ray, if you're listening, it's you I'm talking about.
Hey, Ray.
So we've got Hal Cranmer here today. Phil, bring us in, man.
Yeah, definitely. So, when you go, poking around the internet for people doing interesting things in the healthcare system, you never quite know who you're going to find. And I was real fortunate to connect with Hal, who's doing some very interesting things in a part of the healthcare system that, people sometimes don't think about. And really, we'll get into it during the conversation, but I think for a large part, what Hal does is kind of ignored because he deals with the end stages of life, and people think that there's nothing you can do at that point. But Hal's doing some real interesting things, and without giving away the punchline, I'm going to let Hal introduce himself to our audience, and I look forward to getting into this discussion with him.
Well, Phil and Jack, first of all, I want to thank you for bringing me onto this podcast. I follow both of you guys on Twitter, and I love what you're writing about, what you're passionate about. So it seems like a really good fit for what I'm trying to do, and I'm hoping we stay in touch for a long time to come. So I own 4 assisted living homes in the Phoenix, Arizona metropolitan area. I used to own 5. I sold one about 2 years ago just because it was getting too busy for me.
I'm sorry, but 4 sounds like 3.5 times too much work. So,
well, you got to be passionate about it to want to do it. And I didn't get into this with a passion for it. I used to flip some houses and run a bunch of rental properties up in Minnesota. And I had an investor tell me about assisted living and how the cash flow is better. And so I got into this thinking, cool, I'll make more money and hopefully not work so hard. But when I bought them and moved down to Phoenix, which is a lot better weather than Minnesota, I just fell in love with it. And I fell in love with the families that are in there. I fell in love with just seeing how passionate they are, how much they love their mom or dad or whoever they have in our homes, and how much they're willing to help out. And it became much more than a business. And the caregivers I have became kind of part of my family. And it's so much more than a business now. And it really is exciting, especially when you get a little triumphs along the way. You deal with a lot of heartache and sadness. So when you get the good stuff, it's just phenomenal. But sorry, I digress because I get passionate about this. But
okay.
So I got 4 assisted living homes. They're basically residential homes. Like if you drive by them in the neighborhood, you'd never know that that's a business. You'd think it's some family living there. They're larger homes, obviously. The previous owner converted them into these assisted living homes. We're licensed by the Arizona Department of Health for up to 10 residents in each home. Normally we have 2 caregivers for those 10 residents pretty much the whole time they're awake, from about 6:37 in the morning till they go to bed at night, which is between 7 and 8 o'clock usually. And then we have one caregiver that stays through the night and checks on them every 2 hours or so, make sure no one's fallen out of bed, and is unconscious, and we don't know. That hasn't happened, knock on wood, but we want to make sure it doesn't. So with this smaller home, it feels much more like a family. I mean, if people want this gorgeous palatial estate, 200-bed facility, we're just not for them. They should go to some of the bigger places. But if they want a cozier family, I get people from those 200-bed facilities moving in just because they feel very impersonal and overwhelming and things like that. And they like
institutional would be the word I would think of.
Well, yeah, facility is supposed to be like a 4-letter word in this assisted living. They always want to say they're, these giant living places or homes or whatever, but it keeps slipping out. But yes, especially during COVID, they all locked everyone in their rooms. Well, we got a home. You can't lock people in their rooms. They have to eat and they have to go to the bathroom and things like that. So our business actually went up during COVID because people didn't want their mom locked away. They wanted them to have some social interaction. And so we were able to give it to them. And the Department of Health was very lenient on us on what we could do to help our residents stay healthy and thrive through that pandemic. Does that give you a sort of summary?
That's a good start.
Yeah. Do you, I guess we'll get some basic questions and then we'll really get into it. So are there particular conditions that you, provide this housing for, or is it anyone that, needs assistance?
There's definitely no regulatory requirements of what we can do. Let me take that back. If they have behavioral issues, there are behavioral homes in the Phoenix area specifically for that. We don't really handle that, although, especially with Alzheimer's and dementia people, you're going to sometimes see behaviors. But we're open to kind of anything, and we've taken some behavioral people in. We just had to categorize them and do a few other things. You name the chronic disease, I probably had it in my home. Anywhere from Alzheimer's to dementia to Parkinson's to diabetes all over the place, to osteoporosis to Crohn's disease to all of those will have them, and a lot of them will have a combination of several of those. We try to screen them and see if they're appropriate for our home. We want to make sure they're not completely antisocial, because they're going to be around other people. We have everyone eat together all the time and do activities together and things like that. But we'll try to take them. I've had people as old as 105 in my home, and I think the youngest I had was 38. I've currently got a 42-year-old. So it depends on the person, the condition. It's very, every case is different kind of thing.
And how long ago did you get into this? Did you buy the homes?
So I bought my first home in 2015. I was still living in Minnesota when I bought it. I had an extremely good manager in place. His dad started the home in 2001 or something like that. And so I was flying down once a month for that first year to do it. And then a package of 4 homes came for sale. I came down here first and took a course in doing this. There was a real estate investing course on how to do this. And then the guy who was teaching the course had a realtor who kind of specialized in this stuff. And so I asked for his contact information, got to know him. And so he was bringing me the deals. So I bought that first one from him, and then he got this package of 4. And I told my wife, hey, we got enough potential cash flow here to move down to Phoenix and just do this. So I kind of quit my job up there, and we moved the whole family down here. My daughter was going to ASU at the time. My son was going to be a freshman at ASU, my older son, when the year we moved down here in 2016. And then my youngest son was like just about to start 8th grade. So it was kind of a transition for him. But yes, we moved down in 2016, but we started running these things in 2015.
So it sounds like, what really started as a pure, business investment opportunity turned into a passion project for you. Very
much so. Yeah. I mean, flipping houses and doing rental properties is nice, but I had rental properties mostly near the University of Minnesota. So I was renting to like kids, grad students, things like that. So a lot of keg parties to deal with, a lot of, smells awfully weird in here, that kind of thing. And I didn't really feel like I was helping them a whole lot other than giving them a roof over their head. So it was very much a business. This was more, I'm dealing with mom and dad's life on the line here. And so that extra responsibility also meant, extra joy when things went well. And even when it goes badly, they pass away, as all of us will, just being invited to the funeral and meeting people who've done amazing things. I had a guy in my home who was a POW in the Hanoi Hilton for 5.5 years, was shot down over Vietnam. And I, a former Air Force pilot, really looked up to those guys when I was growing up, not necessarily the POWs, but the guys flying in Vietnam and stuff. I have the great, some great grandson of John Quincy Adams in my home. I've got a guy who participated in the Berlin airlift. I had a guy, I've got Korea War vets. I had a guy who made a fortune flipping cattle ranches in northern Canada. So just the stories that you hear are just amazing. I mean, I've got living history in my homes. It's just so neat to sit down and talk to these people.
You're muted, Jack.
I'm normally better than this. The reason folks tune into this show, it's a good story. I'm not going to pretend it's not, but the reason folks tune into this show is because we talk about metabolic health. And I think that's why you're on this show. In fact, I know it is. Talk about, I did a little research and I saw a few mentions of stories of how you help people, not just in the last stages of life, be comfortable, but you're actually helping people regain things that they've lost. And I want to hear more about that. Tell us more about what makes your homes different, other than you try to make them a family place. There's other stuff you're doing that's different, I know.
Right. So when I got into this, I toured some homes and sort of learned about the business, because obviously I don't have a background in this. I don't have a medical degree. I don't even try to be a doctor, or offer any medical advice. But I was really turned off by how lethargic people looked in other assisted living homes. Like, you'd go in, they're all laying on the couch or they're all in their room. The TV's on, and they're just sitting there all day that way, and people are bringing them something to eat. They eat regularly. I'm not saying they starve them or anything like that, but there doesn't seem like there's any life left to them. Like, they're just putting them in the warehouse and waiting for them to expire. And I was like, I'm not going to let my home be that way. I'm going to do whatever I can. Maybe there's some people who come to me in that condition and they're on hospice, and there's nothing I can do other than make them comfortable. And if that's the case, then that's what we're going to do. But there's an awful lot of people who come to me with the potential for life, for quality of life and with the time they have left. They don't all come to me in hospice. They come to me just because they need more care, and their families are, have a life. They work full time. They've got kids. Being a full-time caregiver to their parent isn't an option for them. So when they come to us, I don't know prescriptions and things like that. I have doctors who take care of that. I don't think that's my realm. And whatever the doctor says that's what goes, and we give them those prescriptions. However, I'm going to keep asking the doctors, they really need that? Can we cut back on this? I mean, we have people come in our homes with 20, 25 medications. And I'm thinking, what was the clinical trial that showed all those 25 medications are fine for them to have, and the interaction between all of them? And I'm sure there isn't one. So I'm going to bug them of, what can we do to get them off these medications? Either what do I have to do that, or do they really need that? Have we just been building up medication without removing the old ones? Then I also said, well, we can eat better. I think there's a lot of perception out there of, it's grandma. So grandma loves to see the kids get cookies and ice cream and, pies and all this stuff that's really sweet and nice and good to taste, but ain't doing grandma any favors. So I talk to the families and say, look, I want them to do better. Yes, I want them to feel happy and everything, but here's how we make them feel happy. It's not food. You come anytime you want. One of the biggest things I think helps people's health is social interaction. And the best social interaction for older people is their own family, their kids, their grandkids. I just became a grandfather a month ago, and it's the greatest thing in the world. I thought, oh man, I'm getting old, but I can't tell you how much I love that kid. And so I just think the more they see that, that's why I abolished visiting hours at my home. I said, tell the families, you want to come over at 2 a.m, I'm totally fine with it. You want to knock on the door at 2 a.m, I'm totally fine with that. Your mom or dad might be asleep and it might not be a great visit for you. You might want to call first, but if you want to do that, if you're wondering what we're doing when you're not around, you just knock on the door anytime, come in. And I want you to come in. And I want them to get well enough that even if they don't go home, they get well enough that they can go out to dinner with you, or they can go home for the weekend, or they can go home for Christmas, or they can, Thanksgiving, whatever. We had the guy who flipped cattle ranches went on a cruise with his family from our home. And so even if I don't get them totally fine, I get them well enough that they can enjoy life. So the food's one component of it. I hired a guy to be my personal trainer at the homes, and he goes to it 5 days a week. And I include that in the price because I want one monthly fee and not nickel and dime people. And so he goes to the home and works out the residents 5 days a week for an hour. And we do it in a big social group because I want the interaction. I want people making fun of each other. And we have a karaoke machine, and he'll just have them sing sometimes. But, just moving, doing things, getting involved. I think their health goes up with that stuff. Being on their own, just watching TV, it's going to decline. And I'm not saying I don't have them watch TV. I got TVs in the rooms and cable and everything, but I try to limit that. We try to have good food. We just try not to have ice cream around so people aren't thinking of it. It's not in the home. It's sort of out of sight, out of mind. Candy, all that kind of stuff. Our desserts are berries, or maybe some carrots or something like that. I try to not do much. And this has been a journey for me. I've been learning. I tried to, for a while, I heard how great plant-based stuff is. So I talked to a naturopathic doctor. She came in and trained all our residents. We got some nutritionists, and we tried going a little plant-based, and I had a rebellion on my hands. So we kind of canceled that. And then lately I've been discovering sort of low carb and carnivore kind of stuff as a result of, um, I picked up an exercise thing as I researched exercise for my own residents. I found this system called the X3 system that this
Oh
guy,
yeah.
Dr. John Jaquish, uses. And I love it. And I bought myself some. I bought one for my parents. I bought a bunch for my personal trainer and said, use these in the homes as much as you can.
This episode is brought to you by X3. Now, Phil,
Yeah,
all we
I'm
got to do is
sorry.
get them to pay us.
I
I
don't get a
know.
No,
commission. I
no.
just love
No.
it.
Believe me, I
Um,
talk about it often. I'm a big fan of it. I use it as well. So
And it's easy, and my residents get a good workout without, I mean, we're not making CrossFit champions here, but we're getting decent results. And so part of his X3 thing is the carnivore diet. So I looked more into it. I've also done a lot of research on Alzheimer's and Bredesen, dementia. And I found this guy, Dale Bredesen, out in California that has this thing called the Bredesen protocol, where he's actually reversed Alzheimer's in some people. I mean, I don't know what I'm allowed to say on that FDA wise and everything, but I see testimonial videos, and I actually drove out to a home in San Diego that does his protocol for everyone in the home. They only accept people who want to do the Bredesen protocol. It's called the Marama experience, and and they've had tremendous success improving people. So we've started doing that in our home, and part of the Alzheimer's dementia improvement is a low carb diet. There's a whole bunch of other stuff to it, but the low carb diet's a big part of it. So it kind of jived with the carnivore thing too. I work with a company called A Mind for All Seasons up in Idaho to implement that. And we've got a lady on it. I've got another lady moving out of Texas to come in and do it with me. She's supposed to be here in the next couple of days. And then I got another lady that moved in a couple of weeks ago from Pensacola, Florida, and they needed some time to settle in, but we're going to introduce them to it next week. And the lady that I've got on it now, she's been on it a couple months, and her cognitive scores, that when we've given her the MOCA tests and some of the other tests, have actually improved. I mean, and my caregivers are like, she's remembering all our names now. She couldn't do that when she came in here. So not to say I'm going to cure her or anything like that, but even if I can get them a bit better, that their family can enjoy them and they can enjoy the time they have left, I consider that a huge win.
Well, I think there's more stories that you're not telling us. Again, I did a little snooping around and tried to learn a little bit about you. I saw, I didn't count, but more than one example of folks coming into one of your homes in a wheelchair, unable to get themselves around. And as a result of how you provide care, going from not being able to stand to being able to stand, to using a walker, to actually being able to get themselves around without a walker. Tell us some of those stories, and in particular, why you think you're able to have those kind of results when that ain't the normal experience in these kinds of senior care facilities.
Okay. Well, I think
you're allowed to brag on this show.
All right.
We are intentionally going against the mainstream here.
Yep.
Okay.
We know we're saying stuff that is controversial.
Right.
And everybody that we talk to can back it up either in their own life or in the lives of their patients, or both. So you don't have to tread lightly here.
Okay. Well, I give a lot of credit to my personal trainers. So when I got into this, it seemed like the big push, like to do well in these homes, is to get like a perfect inspection from the Department of Health. And I totally understand the role of the Department of Health. I don't want people abusing seniors and, doing it the right way and everything. But it everyone was so focused on, we got to make sure the paperwork looks good. And, when someone gets a perfect inspection, they brag all over Facebook and, Twitter, hoping, hey, I'll get more residents if they know I'm doing everything right by the Department of Health. Well, that Department of Health, yes, they look at the residents and make sure there's not gaping wounds on them or, bruises from abuse or something, but they don't really, they're not telling them you need to do this. Like for food, the Department of Health requirement is that we post a week-long menu at all times so the residents knows what's coming up on the week. Well, I could put ice cream and macaroni and cheese and pie on there every meal. And they'd say,
that
well,
would be
you
fine.
might want to give them some nutritionist stuff, but you meet our requirements, right?
Yeah.
So the big compliment I get from the Department of Health, compliment / yeah, I have a couple write-ups, nothing huge, but I need signatures from families that are out of state and trying to track them down, and I don't have it by the time because they show up unannounced. So they say, well, your paperwork isn't, optimal. However, your residents are amazing. They're all walking around and talking and everything. And so that to me is a huge compliment. The paperwork, the families don't move them in because my paperwork's fantastic. They want to know that we're giving them the medications per the doctor's orders, which we are. Usually the write-up's something like, hey, you didn't get this fire extinguisher inspected till February and it was due in January, something like that. So when we talk about individual stories, like I have one lady that moved in 2016 on hospice, bedbound. We've been feeding her gradually more and more nutritious meals, and she's still with us. And she was in hospice in 2016. Wow. And she now she was in a wheelchair for a couple of years with me, and now she's walking with assistance. Like we have bars around the homes on the walls that they hold on to, that my trainer will do like leg lifts and squats, or we'll use the bars so they can pull themselves out of the wheelchair and sit back down. And she's walking along those bars, kind of holding on to them. So she belongs to a church, and the priest comes over here regularly and is absolutely thrilled. And she's been able to go to the church now and celebrate mass and everything. I'm kind of a religious guy and love that kind of stuff.
That's got to be incredibly meaningful for someone who is bedbound.
Yes.
And has that kind of spiritual practice that they were not able to participate in, and as a result of the care.
But that's the quality of life I'm talking about. Yes, she's still in my home. She's not living at home, but she's enjoying life, which is the main thing we want for them, and if we can send them home. I have a guy that is going home today. And I just posted him on a little video of him on Twitter. I don't know if you saw it, but he was kind of in rough shape. He was actually living by himself in Mexico. And he was kind of wasting away down there and not doing well. And his family went down and go, oh my God, he needs care. So they brought him up, put him in our home. Well, he's going home with his family today. And he was standing there singing and dancing and everything, celebrating, wow, going home.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. And one of the biggest compliments I got as a hospice agency told me, we're not sure we want to bring anyone more to your home because you always take them off our hospice.
Because it makes us look like we don't know what we're doing.
Right. And they meant it in a totally complimentary way. They weren't like, no, we need to keep them on hospice. So, but hearing that just, made my day. So, and I'm not doing anything crazy scientific. I'm just feeding them good food, and I'm exercising them, and I'm giving them a ton of social interaction.
Okay. Talk about, typically the folks who are paying attention to this kind of show are in their 30s or 40s or 50s, and they've added pounds over the years, and they're stiff and they feel sluggish, and it's just kind of the typical, you reach middle age and everything starts falling apart. And we talk about things that help them to get better,
Right.
both in terms of their physical health and also in their habits for maintaining health. You're dealing with an entirely different demographic. You're talking about folks who are, in some cases, have been declared, you're going to be dead soon, go somewhere where they can take care of you at the end of your life. And you're doing something different than is happening in other hospice locales. So I want details about, and I'm not asking you to throw people under the bus, but your homes are doing some specific things nutritionally that aren't normal in other places. Let's go into details, because many of us have older parents.
Right.
In
Definitely.
fact, I think everyone's
older
parents are older than themselves.
I have older parents. Yep. Fortunately, they're still alive and doing well.
So talk about and what I'm interested in is, you've got to have folks who've been eating crappy for years or maybe their whole life,
Right.
and you introduce them to a new way of eating. I want to hear how they respond emotionally to the new way of eating initially, and then as it begins to demonstrate efficacy.
Well, I get the whole range, so I don't want to make it sound like I fix everyone. I get people who want to come in my homes.
You really are from the Midwest, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm from Connecticut originally.
Oh, well, that Midwest
But I feel like
has really rubbed off on you here.
Yeah, my mom's from Chicago, and she raised me well, I guess. And my wife's from Minnesota, so I'm
there you go.
by marriage. Okay, so where do we go with this?
Nutrition details.
Right. So what I'd say for the first thing for your motivation for your 30, 40, and 50-year-olds is visit an assisted living home. Not necessarily mine, but visit anyone near you. That'll motivate you to get healthy, because everyone who comes to my home, even if I explain this program and the results we're having, says, I don't want to be here. I want to live at home. And I totally get that.
Yeah.
My parents said, Hal, you have beautiful homes. Don't ever put us in them. So if you want some motivation to be healthy, start now in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. All right. And you'll get motivated if you go to these homes. I would say something that's very important to know is dementia starts in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. You don't see the signs and symptoms of it until your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. But what you do in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, at least what I've seen, and again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving medical advice, but everything I've read says what you do in your younger life can very much affect what happens to you in your older life, especially with dementia and Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. And if you spend time with people who have dementia and Alzheimer's, it'll motivate the heck out of you to eat well. I would say if you can cut out the carbs now, I've been on a journey to do that. I was a big beer drinker in college, and through my Air Force career, it was sort of expected to do that. I don't really drink anymore. I found cutting out one thing at a time, concentrate on that candy bar after lunch, get rid of that first, and then get rid of your breakfast cereal, and then eat your burgers without a bun. Have a salad instead of French fries with your burgers, something like that. Just take on, no pun intended, bite-sized things to get along there. I would say try to move as much as you can. I think a lot of the problems we see we get a lot of people who come to us because their mom is in her apartment or her house by herself, or her dad is, and they sit in front of the TV all day and don't do anything. Yeah. And that's when they saw the decline coming. A, they're not spending time with other people, and B, they're not moving around. So even if you don't go to the gym and work out, go walking, get out in the sunshine, go for a run, a bike ride, pick up a hobby sport. Arizona, everyone goes hiking here. Some people do it in 115 heat, which I don't understand, but just move. And then I would say, don't be a hermit. I think a lot of guys, especially men, as we get older, don't make friends easily.
Yeah,
Um,
I've seen that.
I stay in touch with all my other buddies, but because I'm busy with this business, I don't make an effort to go out and meet new guys. So my wife actually during the pandemic made me buy a boat. She's like, you're going to find social people to be with. So I've done that, and through sort of a local boating club and stuff, I've made some friends, and it's been wonderful. So I would say those relationships help with your brain and train your brain and things like that. And I think we're social creatures, and just like we're supposed to eat good nutrition, we're supposed to have interactions with other people, definitely with your family, but reach out and spend time with others. I think it'll do a lot of good. I don't know if that helps. That's
But
not.
we're getting there. Yeah.
I think so. So I mean, what I'm hearing is, you are getting pretty amazing results, for people who are at the end stages of, all these diseases. And so it really points to, imagine what you can do if, you start this stuff earlier. And like you say, I think everyone's goal is to not end up in one of your places, just like their goal is to not end up on my operating table.
Exactly.
And, this is the way you accomplish it. I have a couple of questions, but let's start with, so you got into this as an investment essentially, and you're obviously running a business. And, one of the criticisms that you often hear about, the carnivore diet, low carb diet, and all this stuff is it's too expensive. So I'm sure you've looked at this from the business standpoint, from the financial standpoint. Talk
Right.
a little bit about, running a home, running a group home. I don't want to call it an institution because it's clearly not an institution, but
No, that's fine.
you're running a significant organization, you're caring for 50 people or whatever it is. You would see the finances of it. So I'm curious
yeah.
to hear what you've seen on that.
Well, I've been extremely blessed by a very smart wife who handles all our finances, who runs the books for this business. But we go over it together. And you're right. I do look at it, and obviously, like every business, try to maximize revenues, minimize costs. But what people don't look at is what's your total. I used to be in manufacturing. What's your total cost of ownership? They call it. You don't buy a part to manufacture it. You buy the part and decide where to buy it, but it's not just the price you buy it, but what's the freight on it? What's the lead time? What's their quality record? Am I going to have to throw half the parts away? There's all kinds of costs associated with what you're doing beyond the specific, very visible cost of going to the grocery store and buying the meat or whatever food you're buying. So here's how I look at it. When I need a new resident, when we lose someone, they hopefully move out, go home, but most of the time pass away. 80% of the people who move in, I get through what's called a referral agent. These are former social workers, nurses, case managers at hospitals, things like that have a very good network into rehab facilities, hospitals, doctors' offices, things like that. And so those networks call them and say, hey, I have a 88-year-old lady with Parkinson's disease. Can you place her in Surprise, Arizona? And so those referral agents call me that I've made connections with and say, we need to move this person in. They're big national ones of those, like A Place for Mom. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I've heard of that.
Caring.com, things like that. So when they refer them to me and I put them in my homes, I have to pay them a month's rent, whatever I'm charging that resident move in, the first month goes to them. And some of them just give me a phone number and I do everything else. And they get, several $1,000s because of it. So every month that I'm keeping people alive and happy and thriving means a month I don't have to pay a referral agent. So,
Oh, I get
so
it.
if you look at the total cost and my return on investment, a couple $100s a month more in food versus one
A
referral
month's
fee for
rent.
maybe 2 or 3 referral fees a month, it's a no-brainer, and as they get better, the risk of my caregivers having an injury because their backs don't have to worry about it.
Oh,
um,
wow.
their cost of care goes down. I don't have to, if we can get them going to the bathroom on their own, we're not buying supplies, things like that. It's more,
So
I
basically,
bring their costs down for medical issues, and so maybe we'll raise the rent a little or something, and we'll both participate in the savings. So you got to look at the whole business, not just the food bill. You know,
exactly.
yeah,
Your
and the
cost of
rent.
ownership, your cost of running the business goes down when you buy better food,
Mhm.
when you create a social environment where people are interacting socially regularly, where they get to see their family whenever their family wants to. And even though you're paying a personal trainer and have bought fitness equipment, that still actually drives down your costs as a business owner. And you end up with happier, healthier everybody else.
Not to mention my close rate when I show the place to families is in the 80 to 90% range. And usually if I don't get someone, it's either because my home's too far away from their house, but they thought they'd check it out anyway, or um, I get the impression they don't want, their mom or dad there because they don't want them getting better. They want to get to the
Yeah.
inheritance. They got dementia. That's not my mom and dad anymore. Let's just get this over with.
Yeah.
So when they come in and see all these happy, healthy people walking around, I usually get them because
Makes
they're
sense.
going to the other care homes and everyone's just lying around watching TV. So, and I go, look, here's all the things I do for you. I'm not this gorgeous palatial estate, but I'm not that group home where mom or dad's just going to lie around all day.
Yeah.
So I can charge more and say, you're going to get value for money. I'm putting a lot more effort into trying to make your person better. So the revenue goes up and the costs go down, even if my food bill goes up and I have a personal trainer expense.
I get frustrated sometimes with family who won't try alternative forms of healthcare or medical care because it's not covered by their insurance.
Oh yeah, I get that all the
And
time.
and I figured out a long time ago, because I had a health crisis, that it was a whole lot cheaper for me to pay out of pocket for care that actually got me well
Mhm.
than to uh, go to a healthcare provider who took my insurance but didn't actually heal me.
Right.
It's to me, it was a simple calculus, and I to this day it staggers me that's not blindingly obvious. Thank God I got through to my mom several years ago. So
Yeah. So assisted living isn't cheap. I mean, about the cheapest
sure,
you're going to get it is if you're on Medicaid, you're going to get it for about 3,000 a month. Okay. It goes up to, I know there's a place in Phoenix that charges 18,000 a month. A gym membership's a whole lot cheaper than that. When you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, my parents are in their 80s, they go to the gym. Um, it the cost of long-term care, and unless you get long-term care insurance, there are some programs for people who don't have much money, like Medicaid, but other than that, you're on your own. You better pay out of savings, selling your house, reverse mortgage, something like that. So yes, finding care that works is so much more important than finding care covered by insurance. I'll tell you one insurance story. This Bredesen protocol we're putting this lady on. One of the items is we check their hormone levels because the hormones affect the brain, like a lot of other stuff. And her hormones, relevant ones like pregnenolone and progesterone, I think, and maybe estrogen, I can't remember exactly which ones, were low. Well, our doctor, we need to prescribe this stuff, can't prescribe any hormone treatment because it's not the standard of care for her insurance, her malpractice, that kind of stuff, her liability. So she's like, I totally get it. I read the research. It makes total sense. I'm not going to prescribe it for her.
Yeah.
So it almost works against them having this
Yeah.
insurance sometimes.
Yeah, no, and that's really a shame to hear. And I was going to ask you kind of what feedback you get from, these patients' physicians, when you have someone like the lady you described who was put on hospice, and 6 years later, not only is she still alive, but she's actually in much better condition. What kind of feedback do you get, from their physicians, from their medical teams?
That physician that's struggling to prescribe the hormones told my manager, I know this sucks, but I just want you to know, when I get old, I want to move into this home. So mostly the doctors that I work with love it and think it's great. And how can we help, as much as they can. So I'm blessed with a lot of good medical people around me. They don't really get into it. They let me kind of do the diet, exercise kind of stuff, but they take care of the prescription stuff and procedures, but they're cheering me on. But I'll tell you what, I went to a hospital one time to visit a patient that was in there that was close to the end. And I had this nurse come in and order her food, and ordered her macaroni and cheese and chocolate.
Mm.
And I was just like, I said to her, couldn't we do a little better than that? And she's like, she's near the end, just let her enjoy. And she was practically like non-responsive. So it wasn't like she asked to order that. I'm like,
Right.
well, just get, as long as you're just ordering, why not get her something? And I just wonder, how often does that happen?
Mm.
Yeah, well, I can tell you it happens very often, but and it's, it's sad that we, give up on these people. We don't, give them hope, and you're doing exactly that. You're giving hope. You're demonstrating that there is hope for many of these people. And yeah, you may not cure, whatever it is that their disease, but you're going to make whatever time they have left better for them. And in many situations, you're obviously extending that time that they have left. But I think the quality of it is what most people, would care about. And so I think it's amazing work. What do your, I don't know what kind of, networking you have within, the assisted living industry. But do you talk to your fellow owners or managers of assisted living, and what kind of response do they have hearing what you're doing and the outcomes that you're getting?
I get a range of responses. I get some that are just thrilled by it and think it's just awesome, and they want to learn more about it and everything. And I try to give them all the resources I use to find out about it. And I get some there's a bunch of them that were like me, that were investors that got into this, and they're continuing to be investors and didn't pick up the passion, and just were like, I'm looking at my costs and everything. I don't want to spend a lot of money on groceries, kind of thing. So it's, I tell my kids that when you graduate from high school, look around your class. You've got superstars down to slugs. That doesn't change the whole way through life. You know, you're always going to have some great people, and you're going to have some horrible people, and you're going to have everything in between. I think it's that way. And so just like my residents, I want to find the ones who want to get better. And
Sure.
if you just want to hang out and eat ice cream and pizza and watch TV, I got plenty of people I can refer you to.
Mhm.
It's the same way with the assisted living homeowners. There's some phenomenal ones, and there's some not so great ones, and there's everything in between.
Do you see family members make changes to their behaviors as a result of seeing their parents
Um,
get better? Do you have any experience with that?
yeah, some I do. Um, what really got me excited about this was an assisted living home's kind of the perfect environment to change behaviors, because I
Oh,
control the food,
sure.
I control their schedule. You know, they can't cheat. They can't go to the fridge and find that chocolate cake in the middle of the night. Um, we've locked the fridge occasionally on some of the people.
I love it.
So, you know, I get a lot of families talk about it and love it, and they'll bring me books about it, and hey, have you read this one, and things like that. Um, but I don't take someone who is way overweight, smokes and drinks a lot, and turn them into, you know, a fantastic physical specimen. But I plant the seed, and I see them start doing more and more. Like they'll say, hey, I joined a gym today, you know, I'm going to do this, that kind of thing. And I think it's partly, like I said, if you need motivation, go to an assisted living home, because
Yeah.
when they toured around looking at them, they're like, I'm going to the gym.
Wow. So the three elements are get your nutrition straightened out, move
Yeah.
in some way,
Hmm.
rather than eat real food instead of the crap that everybody eats.
We call it one
Move,
ingredient meals.
call them what?
Like if you read the ingredients on food and it says broccoli or beef or chicken, you can eat it. If it says xylomintine niacinamide,
Right.
don't eat that.
One ingredient foods. I like that.
Hmm.
Phil, I've heard Phil say on more than one occasion, if you can tell what it is by looking at it, you can eat that.
Okay.
I thought that was pretty sharp.
Yeah.
Okay, so eat good food instead of the crappy food, move instead of sit on your butt, and have that social interaction, regular social interaction.
Yes. I think that's huge. I tell my residents and their families, family is the best medicine,
Mm,
because it's you can tell the residents that get regular visits by their family are happier and generally healthier.
wow.
Hmm.
I hope at some point somebody hears this and says, I want to run an actual controlled study and I want to use one of Hal's places
I don't have
as a
enough subjects for it, but yeah, I would love to
well,
do that.
I'm completely unrelated, but I have a client who is actually in a para healthcare kind of situation, who told me because of what the work he's doing, he had to figure out how these research studies run. The average number of people in a healthcare study published, the ones that get cited and all that is it's less than 25.
Whoa. I thought it was like supposed to be thousands,
Yeah, we
tens
all
of
thought that.
thousands.
Yeah.
We all thought that.
Wow.
He's running a research study where the N is just slightly less than 100. And my comment to him was, wow, Mark, it sounds like you really need a lot more. And he said, and then he told me about the average NIH healthcare study has less than 25 people in it. So
Wow.
I'm putting a call out there, folks. Here is home care. I'm sorry, what's the name? What's the type of business?
Assisted living.
Assisted living business that's different, that is certainly a good place to run the kind of research studies that some of you want to run. Contact Hal. So Hal,
Thanks.
this leads us to the point of, how do listeners find out more about a place for parents?
Okay, so you can go to our website, aparadiseforparents.com.
A paradise for parents. I love it.
Paradise for Parents. And then I have to give kudos to the previous owner. He came up with that one. On there, you can see a music video we made with our residents. We took
I saw that.
Queen's
Oh my
Bohemian
God, that was
Rhapsody and
fantastic.
Assisted Living Rhapsody. Had a blast doing that.
Oh,
And then I'm on Twitter at Hal Cranmer. We have a Facebook. I started a Facebook group called Brainstorming Alzheimer's, where I kind of am talking about the Bredesen protocol and what we're doing in our home and success and failures. It's not an easy process, but giving people ideas for helping people with Alzheimer's. I also have a Paradise for Parents Assisted Living is our business page on Facebook. And then you can just, if you want, email me. It's hal@aparadiseforparents.com. I'd love to talk to people. I did another podcast recently and had a lot of people email me. Surprised.
all right. Well, it'll happen.
I'd love to talk to them. I love people who are passionate about making other people better, like you, Phil.
Yeah. No, that's when I had heard what you were doing and heard your story, it's one that needs to get out because, like I said, ultimately, what you're doing, what I'm doing, what we're all trying to do here is give people hope, and you are really, dealing with what many would say are the most hopeless people, the most hopeless situations, and you're giving people hope in those situations, and you're seeing amazing results. And I think it's, like you said, it's a lesson for us all of what can be accomplished, even at late stages of disease. Like I said earlier, imagine what happens when you started earlier.
Right. Oh yeah, everything. The earlier you catch it, the better.
All right. Well, we try to keep these things at about an hour, and I think that's where we're at. I want to remind our listeners, all the contact information for Hal Cranmer and Paradise for Parents will be available on our show notes. So on YouTube, on the various podcast channels, it's all there. And wow, I'm impressed. And since we live in the same town, we're going to get together and have a coffee.
Looking forward to it, Jack.
That sounds like a good idea. Phil, thanks again, man. I love
thank you, Phil. Thank you,
getting
Jack.
to talk to folks like this.
I really enjoyed this.
All right. Well, for Dr. Philip Ovadia and Hal Cranmer, I'm Jack Heald. This is a Stay Off My Operating Table podcast. Go ahead and like and subscribe to this show. We drop a new one every Tuesday at midnight. So we'll talk to y'all next time. America is fat and sick and tired. 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy and at risk of a sudden heart attack. Are you one of them? Go to ifixhearts.co and take Dr. Ovadia's metabolic health quiz. Learn specific steps you can take to reclaim your health, reduce your risk of heart attack, and stay off Dr. Ovadia's operating table.